All right, hello and welcome everybody. This is Catherine coming at you from Hustle in New York City. I'm very excited for today's webinar. We will go ahead and get started. We have most of our folks on the line, and I'm sure some more will join as we jump in here. So you can see Caroline and Kelsey just tuned in as well. They're our presenters from Woodward. And I'm really excited about today's webinar because it's going to give you some tips for how to leverage your volunteers as kind of those worker bees that can help you get those text messages out, and also as a really nice way to engage your volunteers. I used to manage volunteers before coming to Hustle, so this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. So I'm mostly going to be listening today. I'm really going to let Kelsey and Caroline run with the webinar. I do want to mention that we will have about 10 minutes at the end for some Q&A. So please do get ready with your questions. And to submit those, just use that Q&A button at the bottom. It'll come through via a little chat box that I can monitor, and then I will manage those questions at the end. So Kelsey and Caroline are our wonderful partners at Woodward Academy. It's a K-12 school in Georgia, and they used us for the first time in the spring to launch their first ever Giving Day. And so with that, I will let them take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. I'm Kelsey Darden, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Woodward Alumni Fund here at Woodward. So I mainly deal with alumni giving. I'm a proud graduate of Woodward, class of 2009, and I have the honor of working with another alumna in the office, Caroline Stansel, who will introduce herself.
I'm Caroline. I'm Director of Alumni Relations here at Woodward. As she mentioned, I'm also an alum, class of 03. And I oversee all of our alumni giving efforts and alumni engagement, events, and programming. All right, just a little bit about Woodward. We are an old institution. We were founded in 1900. We have about a little over 10,000 living alumni, but 9,000 of those we consider as solicitable. Our participation right now for giving is about 14%, and we have a goal to reach 17%. We have really in more recent years been focused on engaging our young alumni, and that's showing in our alumni giving numbers. Those classes, the young alumni last 20 years tend to have higher participation rates than some of our older classes. And we are still using all of the traditional channels, of course, mail, email, social media. We have been using phone, but we'll get to that in a minute. And of course, Hustle as of lately. And we have one more member of our team. We're a small alumni team, I guess relatively speaking. We have one more member in addition to us who focuses solely on our event coordinating. So why do we text? We had really been talking about implementing a text platform for a while. We tried a few different ones, but hadn't really found the right fit that would work for us. So we met Hustle at a case conference last year and really wanted to try it. And it was mid-year, so we were, trying to figure out how we could fit it in with our budget, and we were able to make it happen. We had outsourced our phone-a-thon for several years. We've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years. And as you've probably seen in national trends, people aren't answering the phone anymore. I'm guilty of it. I will screen all of my calls. But if I get a text, I'm at least going to look at it. And if it's from a familiar, friend or classmate, I'm definitely going to respond. So Hustle was, fun and easy way for our volunteers to come in and help us with this Giving Day. One day, easy, commitment. And it was just something that wasn't as intimidating. We weren't telling them they had to come in and make a bunch of phone calls. They were like, oh, I can text. This is so easy.
Yeah. And kind of just touching on our volunteers. So for us, it never even really crossed our minds to use Hustle as an alumni team. We were always kind of envisioning it as a platform for our volunteers. Like Caroline mentioned, you're kind of more apt to answer a message from someone that you know. And so we used our class delegates, which is essentially our class agent program, to reach out to alumni. So alums were reaching out to alums in their class. For example, I'm class of 2009. My whole list was my classmates. So I could say it's, Kelsey Darden, we need your help. for the class of 2009, and it's more relatable than getting a blanket text from just someone on the team. So for us, that made the most sense. It was kind of this fresh and relatable way to connect with them instead of just email or postcard or whatever it might be. The great thing about Hustle too is it allowed us to really tackle that challenge of follow through with our volunteers. Before we had Hustle, we really were depending on our volunteers to do a lot of the asking and the engagement with their peers, but there was no way for us to really check in on them to see if they were doing what we were essentially asking them to do. But Hustle allowed for them to come in, volunteer, text that day. It also allowed for them to continue those conversations after they left. And then if they weren't able to continue those conversations or they kind of dropped out from that conversation, we were able to pick it up and continue for them, which is why we've really enjoyed using Hustle as a tool. So a little bit about One Day for WA. Like Catherine mentioned, it was our first ever giving day. It wasn't something that we had tried previously, but there were a lot of other institutions doing giving days, especially in higher ed. And a couple of our peer schools here in Atlanta also tried it, so we figured it was probably time for us to jump on board. We had tried a few other initiatives in the past, but they were kind of just becoming a little stale and they lasted a little bit too long. We liked the idea of one day, getting it done, kind of generating a lot of energy around that giving day and it allowing us to kind of just knock it out. So for us, we did 1900 minutes, which honored our founding year in 1900. So a little bit over one day, it was about 32 hours. We started midday on March 21st with just a few emails to say, giving day started. If you'd like to go ahead and make your gift now, we'd love to have you go ahead and give. But what really was the kicker was March 21st is when we started hustling. So we had volunteers in the office from morning to evening, hitting up as many alumni as they could. So really the 21st was our big day. But before that, we had sent a few postcards and had posted things on social media just to build awareness. But Hustle allowed us to reach a lot of alums on the 21st. So again, kind of going back to that strategy, we sent a couple of emails throughout the day in conjunction with Hustle, posted updates and all of the things on social media, did a lot of fun things that kind of related back to things that we had talked about in our text messages. Just so that you guys know, we did set a conservative goal of just 100 donors. We didn't really know what to expect. Again, a lot of our peer schools here in Atlanta talked about it, and maybe one or two had done it, but we weren't really quite sure what to expect. As you'll see, we were able to really blow that goal out of the water.
So as we mentioned, we launched in tandem with mail and email leading up to the day. We would have, of course, loved to load every alum we had a cell phone number for into the platform, but of course we had a budget to stick to. So we loaded in a group that we thought would be most responsive and also made sure that we had the classes in there that we had volunteers actively engaged with. So we messaged about 1,900 contacts that day, classes of 1990 to 2018 that were contacted. We had about 15 active volunteers here that day, and that included some of our agents, some of our alumni, faculty, and staff who are already on campus. We had told our alumni board they were required to be here that day, and many of them were. And they were having so much fun with it and were just blown away by the ease. And we had different shifts throughout the day. We told them that they could come anytime from 9 to 9. And, of course, as they arrived, we got them trained up. And, as the day went on, there was even little competitions between agents or volunteers who was, had class of 99 and class of 97. They knew each other. So they were having a good time kind of, going back and forth. I got another gift, I got one. So we were able to kind of track the top classes throughout the day, which kind of kept it fun and competitive as well.
So like I mentioned earlier, we were able to blow that internal goal of 100 donors out of the water. We ended the day at 316 donors and raising over $33,000, which was huge. I don't even think we dreamed of expecting that. We really had no idea, but that was in huge part to Hustle. There was realistically probably no way we would have been able to reach as many alumni on that day as we did if it had not been for Hustle. And what we actually saw was a lot of it was based on volunteer energy, like Caroline mentioned. I think at about 4 p.m. on March 21st, we had about like 80 donors, so we were getting really nervous that we weren't even really going to hit our 100 goal. But we got a new shift of volunteers in, volunteers who were gung-ho about sending out all of their text messages to all of their classes and asking for more, and like Caroline mentioned, getting into those competitions with each other that really kind of sparked a drive to get gifts in. And what we saw was essentially after 6 p.m. we saw those 200, yeah, the large influx, like literally got us to 316, and it was so exciting. We ended up staying until about 10:30 instead of leaving at 9. I don't even really think anyone wanted to go home, but it was late. We've been here all day, and gifts continued to come in through the day or through that evening. But one of the other things that I'll mention really quickly too is if you are planning a giving day or something like this, and you do have an alum who has a planned large gift, it's a good day for them to make that gift. So we ended up getting to that $33,000 number because we had an alumni couple who had a pledge, a large pledge, and they're like, can we go ahead and pay this today? And we're like, absolutely, it's a perfect day to pay your pledge. We'll take it. And so we're able to count them in there too. But just a couple examples of messages that we sent and how we used it. Like we mentioned, we used our class delegates, so they were reaching out to people mainly in their class. So Becky sent emails to her classmates, and you can see from their response, they knew exactly who she was. You know, hey Becky, go ahead and send me the link. Thanks. Hustle makes it really easy to go ahead and get that link preloaded and send it out. And she was able to do that and move right on to the next person.
All right, and this is an example from me personally. You know, I said, hi Evan, it's Caroline Stansel from WA. It's one day for WA, our first ever alumni giving day. And we're trying to rally as many alumni as possible to participate. You know, so far, O3 is leading the way. Can we count you in? So I added that little emoji at the end. That's something Hustle definitely encourages. Definitely makes it more personal and softer. Not, it doesn't seem like it's, you know, a robot or automated text or anything like that. So I think the emojis are really helpful. I also ended the text with a question, kind of keeping it positive too. Can we count you in? And of course, you see you responded, hi, and yes, have a link. So I was able to shoot him back that link and with another emoji, and he participated that day.
This is another example from Becky. This one just shows the ability to add in those scripts for questions that volunteers might get asked most often. So Becky sent her message and she got back, you know, sure, I'll give $100, but what's it go towards? And instead of having her type out the same script over and over again, we knew that was a question that multiple volunteers might get asked. So we went ahead and loaded in a script that talked about our family and friends and where they could designate their gifts. That all they had to do was just choose it and send it and move right on to the next one. Super easy, super quick.
All right, this is one from our current VP for advancement. He's been here for 25 years, so he knows a lot of alumni. He reached out to one and it was very personal. But you see that she said, is this really you or is this an automated text? And he was like, no, it's really me. How are you? You've got your 20th reunion coming up. Clearly an automated text wouldn't be able to know something like that. So he kept it real conversational and personal. And of course, you know, you'll see that, you know, she said, since it's you, I'll donate. And he was able to send her the link as well. So another successful example there from a beloved faculty member.
And the last example is just kind of one of our favorites. We had another alum, faculty, and staff join us at the end of the day. She literally stood in my office for about 5 minutes, and I gave her a couple of contacts from her class. She didn't even sit down, but she was able to send this text and secure a $1,000 gift. Quite honestly, the response came back, and she's like, I think he's joking. Like, I don't think that this is real. But sure enough, later that day, the gift came in for $1,000, and it just shows again like the ease of Hustle. So easy to secure $1,000 without even sitting down and within 5 minutes. So we love it.
And her job was done. All right, so lessons learned. Fun fact, we implemented Hustle literally the day before our giving day, because again, we weren't really sure if we were going to be able to make it work, but we were able to find a way in our budget and work with the Hustle team to get it off the ground. So if we could do it all over again, we would definitely have one person responsible for the back end of Hustle, loading in the contacts and make sure the scripts are right and everything's working properly. And we would have another staff person responsible for the agent training as they come in. Poor Kelsey was having to do all of the above since she was kind of our internal expert on Hustle. So if we did it all over again, we would definitely kind of designate those roles.
Absolutely, and I would definitely stress training in advance. Hustle's really easy to use and pretty intuitive, but having your volunteers have a heads up before they come in to help you out with whatever they're doing, whether it's a giving day or sending text out for attendance, it's better if they know on the front end kind of how the program works and all the nuances. There were a couple moments where we had to jump in and maybe add a script or do something in the moment for a volunteer that we might have been able to walk through if we had given them a little bit more training in advance. But again, it's really easy and not tutorial for them. Could be as simple as a webinar. They're not physically able to come to your office, or even just sending the Hustle manual, which is easy to understand as well.
And then just keeping them engaged throughout the day and having fun. We have food all day long. If you have food, volunteers will come usually. So we had breakfast in the morning, we had Chick-fil-A at lunch, and then in the evening we had, a more substantial dinner, and of course beer and wine when, the right time of day. So again, they all had fun with it, and we, stayed late and kept the competition going.
And the last thing is just figuring out what works best for your institution. So like I mentioned, we used our volunteers so that they could actually reach out to their classmates. Again, having that personal peer-to-peer touch. So we used assigned versus first come, first serve. The first come, first serve, your volunteers are just assigned to whoever hops into the program first. So even though it might be the class of 2009, I might be texting someone from the class of 2003, which isn't the worst thing, and it certainly works. But if you would like to be able to kind of control that more, assign works really well. So that way I'm only texting people from 2009. But again, it's what works best for you. We just had really great success with texting people from our class.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. That was really, really fun to walk through with you and kind of hear your strategy behind rolling out Hustle and getting these volunteers included. So I am going to kind of open up the Q&A. So for those of you on the line, please feel free to start sending in your questions. We have about 10 minutes left for the Q&A session. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with some questions that I've kind of been wondering about. We talked a little bit before this, Kelsey and Caroline, about your alumni board, and I'd love to just learn a little bit more about who they are, what's the makeup, and how did they feel when you said that they had to come in and use Hustle?
Yeah, so our alumni board ranges in age from the class of 1983 to the class of 2005, and there's 12 members. We probably had about half of them come in that day, even though it was a requirement. And they thought it was a lot of fun. I think before they came, they were like, oh gosh, this is another thing we have to do. But once they got here and realized how easy it was, they were like, oh my gosh, we've got to do this again. I'm going to tell everyone. So at the next board meeting, we were able to have them vouch for us and say, like, guys, this was so easy, so fun. Everybody needs to be there next year. They couldn't believe how many people they were able to text in such a short amount of time. It was, instead of getting your phone out, texting people that have loaded in, it was so much quicker. And they were really able to vouch for us.
Awesome. So we have a couple of questions that are starting to come in from the audience. So one person is wondering kind of how you mentioned that Hustle was a great tool for follow-up and kind of giving them some guidance. There's a question about kind of more details around that. Did you review every text that everybody sent out? Did you create some guides for them? Kind of how did that work?
Yeah, so with the implementation happening one day before the giving day, I was definitely learning as we were using, and had the opportunity a day after, 2 days after, to go back and review all those text messages. There are a lot of text messages, but you're able to see which ones are unread. And those are the ones that I would go back and look at. A lot of times the conversations were ending. Someone would just say thanks again, or whatever it might be. But if it was a question about giving, I would do my best to go ahead and respond. Not necessarily in a deceitful way, but I wouldn't necessarily reintroduce myself like, hi, this is now Kelsey. I just kind of continued the conversation as if I was still the volunteer. But it is really helpful because you're able to do that from a computer. You don't have to do all of it from your phone. So I'm able to just kind of sit at my desk and go through these unread text messages and respond when appropriate, which was really easy on my end.
And having them here that day too,
Yes.
like the example with Becky, she had a question that maybe would have been outside of her normal knowledge as a volunteer. And so having the preloaded scripts, we were able to point to that one and say, okay, send this one back. So that was really helpful. They didn't really have to do a lot of original content or writing on their own.
So kind of a combination of upfront preparing them with the scripts in the system, and then on the back end being able to review those and follow up when necessary.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So another question actually that kind of tees off of that is about how you made a decision to bring people in person versus allowing them to use Hustle remotely. You know, we do have that mobile app. People are able to use it on the go, but people kind of do different things about doing it in person or remotely. So how did you all arrive at your decision to have everybody come on campus?
Yeah, so one, we love having people on campus. So anytime we can get them down here, it's great for us. But kind of like Caroline mentioned, with it being our first time, we wanted to make sure that we were kind of able to troubleshoot on site. Again, if Becky had that question come up and she wasn't here, it would have required an email to us or call to us or something where she might have stopped engaging, or I could have always hopped in to answer the question, but it was just so much easier to have them here. Also with that, we were able to really build that energy. Hustle's great because if you are off-site, you can kind of ping people to remind them to send their text messages. But again, you know, maybe someone gets the ping and they're doing something and they don't respond and all this stuff. It's almost harder to kind of keep tabs on them when they've left the office. But when they're here, they're invested, they're in it. And even when they do leave from the office, they already know how important it is because they've gotten the buzz from being here. It's certainly something we've talked about the year coming up is those volunteers who can't get into the office, how can we utilize Hustle with them, and just making sure that they actually are using it. For our first time, we just really wanted folks to be here. And like we had mentioned, it really was worth it because it was so exciting. Way more fun here.
Yeah, and I think kind of let them, you know, utilize the tool offsite just to make sure that you have trained them properly ahead of time, so they know how to use it.
Yeah, I think when I've talked to people who have had their volunteers text, some people do use it remotely, but I think there's so much excitement when you get people together that that's a nice bonus in addition to just getting them to be the ones to send out the messages.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have a sense, I guess if everybody was on site, you can answer this pretty easily. Were most people texting from their phones or their laptops, and can you comment on kind of the different experience between the two?
Yeah.
It's kind of a combination.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah.
Like,
iPad.
Yeah.
iPad and phone.
iPad, phone. I was able to do both. You know, kind of throughout the day, I was in here at the table working with some folks. I would use my phone, and then I'd sit back down to my desk and continue the conversation. I think the volunteers, you know, if they brought their laptop, great. It was kind of a mix. Yeah, a lot of phone. I think people just kind of naturally gravitated to since it was texting, but yeah, it was a good mix.
Okay. So this question is a little bit less about the volunteers and more about how you decided to segment your donors or segment your recipients, the people that receive the Hustle text. So were you texting everybody between certain class years? Did you pull out so you were only texting live bunts or side bunts? How did you approach that?
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody hadn't given.
Yes.
So we had loaded in, we pulled out from those specific years and classes that we had delegates for. We had them coded as live bunts.
Which we kind of talked through with our volunteers, but we really didn't lean on it. They might have seen the code, but they didn't necessarily have to use it or use it, just again because we wanted it to be a little bit more organic. But they were coded. We just didn't lean on it as much with our volunteers. And we also made sure our reunion classes were imported as well, so we could kind of lean on the make a gift in honor of your reunion year.
Great. Another question about your results and kind of how you measured those. So do you have a sense of how many gifts that came in were directly because of Hustle or came through Hustle, or did you take a more holistic view of your results?
I'd say 95% of them were as a result of Hustle,
Wow.
which is when we realized, you know, after the fact, we wouldn't have had the result we had without it.
No, yeah, I would totally agree. There certainly was buzz, like you got it in other places, like on social media, or you got your postcard or whatever it might be, but you saw it happening instantly as people were texting, those gifts were coming in on our end. And we use another platform for mobile giving, and we use that in conjunction with Hustle. So any of the gifts that came in on that mobile giving platform were a direct correlation with Hustle. So we were kind of able to see that most of the gifts were coming in through that platform versus our traditional online giving forms, which is great.
And then other questions kind of about those results. Do you have a sense of whether there were a lot of first-time donors that came through? Were they mostly past donors that were kind of renewing their support?
Yeah, so out of that 316, 144 were new donors. And so by our definition, that's someone who's either completely never given or has not given in the past 5 years, which is huge. That's like, is that over half of the people?
That's amazing. That's great to hear.
It was a large number of new donors, which is great. Again, you know, we do all that we can in our office to, you know, build awareness for the Alumni Fund, but it really goes to show you how much peer-to-peer works, especially texting, just because it's so easy and you can have multiple conversations at once versus that one-on-one phone call.
So people are very interested in this topic. So thinking about those donors, do you have a sense of whether they were mostly, you know, your recent grads versus, you know, some older folks? How did that break down? If you know, how did that breakdown fall?
Yeah,
it tended to be younger donors. We don't really directly solicit our alums in college throughout the year, so it would have been that post-college, probably up until like 99.
Yeah, the most engaged.
Yeah.
And again, that kind of goes back to like the volunteers that we had in the office too. For those earlier 90s classes, the volunteers that were texting them weren't from their class, which could play into why there was a less, like the response rate was less from them. But we haven't totally, you know, drill down into like what it could be. But again, most of our younger alums are just constantly on their phone. And if you explain that it only takes 5 minutes to give, you know, they can't really argue against it.
And then, so I'm going to combine a couple questions for our last question, and then we'll wrap up. So we've gotten a few people write in and wonder kind of how you manage the volume. So how much thought did you give to the ratio of volunteers to alumni that you wanted to reach? You know, did you think a lot about kind of how to manage the shifts? And if this was kind of like a first try and there wasn't a lot behind it this time, would you do anything differently next time?
I think we were just willing to have as many people here as possible. We didn't limit that at all. You know, if we had 1 person or 10 people, great. And again, it was a little hectic, but we weren't going to restrict the times that they could come. Like, oh, sorry, not a slot at that time. We really wanted to make it easy for them and for them to be able to come whenever it was convenient for them. And we were able to work around it.
Yeah, we did have, I mean, they gave us a heads up when they would come in, so we were as prepared as we could be with their contacts loaded in and everything. But yeah, one of the great things too about Hustle is, like Caroline mentioned, it could have been 1 person or like 10. I think we've still been able to touch as many people as we did. Sure, with 1 volunteer, it probably would have been a little bit more overwhelming, but with 10, it was just a lot more fun. So hopefully this year we'll have more people on campus and can kind of replicate those results, if not do them better. But
and train up volunteers if they want to do it from afar.
Absolutely.
They absolutely can't be.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I think fun is a good note to end on. So thank you both so much. It was really great to hear your experience, and there were a lot of questions and a lot of interest. So I think people really were curious to learn about how you all kind of pulled this off. So anybody who didn't get their question answered, please feel free to either reply to the follow-up email or email me directly, Catherine, CATHERINE @hustle.com. Thank you both so much, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Bye.